majority of the buyers for most of the groceries that we buy at grocery stores are white men.
Of course.
Who don't understand, regional mole, true to culture taco seasoning, like even, all the things that we're doing, they don't understand it. So that is also like an uphill battle of educating the buyers who are then the gatekeepers for us trying to get in the door.
Yeah. Boy, little did you know, the universe was telling you, you do want to be in the agua fresca beverage business. You just wanted someone else. You just wanted to be in the business with someone else who already figured out all the hard stuff.
Exactly. Somebody who already figured out how to make a shelf stay.
Exactly.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back, or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. As you may or may not know, this is the show where I get to have weekly conversations with some of the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry as we come together today through conversation to try our best to lead this world a little bit better than we found it. Today is a special show. Super excited. We're kind of breaking new ground in a bunch of different ways today together. Very excited to be joined by three incredible women: Jocelyn Ramirez, who you all remember. We'll talk about that in a second. Regina Trillo and Stefanie Garcia Turner, who are the new partners behind this incredible story we're going to unpack today, the fast-growing food products company, TUYYO Foods. And there's so much to learn about this. So having said that, let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today and about our guests before we welcome them into the show. As I mentioned, it's a special episode, and it is a special episode in one way because it's a chance for us to bring back another one of our cherished alumnus of our show to talk about a bold new announcement. Our amiga, Jocelyn Ramirez of, you remember her, Todo Verde Foods from here in LA, who joined us back on episode 167 back in July of 2025. Well, today we're coming together with her and a couple of her friends and collaborators now because we're discussing a massive business combination of these three independent food product companies into this one newly combined company, frankly, just probably built better to compete in today's dynamic and competitive retail markets. But today's conversation is really about more than just a business merger or a product launch story. It's really about a set of very intentional decisions made by three entrepreneurs to value their movements more than their egos. Three powerhouse women of color, pillars of their communities from three different cities with three different sets of superpowers: a chef, a strategist, and a human rights lawyer, coming together to rewrite what leadership in the food products industry, or CPG as they call it, looks like. From sliding into one another's DMs about cactus snacks, to launching award-winning independent CPG brands, to navigating corporate boardrooms, retail giants, policy councils, and trade shows, they didn't just build companies, right? They really built community. And now Nemi Snacks, Todo Verde, and TUYYO Foods are joining forces under one name, TUYYO Foods, not only for the scale of their businesses, but to scale representation, cultural integrity, and the entrepreneurial power of doing things differently. So today we're talking about friendship as a strategy, culture as a competitive advantage, and what happens when women choose collaboration over competition. And ladies, I am super excited to welcome you. We're joining from all over the world, all over North America today. I'm super excited to welcome you to this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Rob.
Super excited. And for those listening or watching, they will notice that one of the fun things about today's show is going to be me trying to navigate having three powerful guests on the show at once instead of just one, which is where I'm very, very accustomed to. So excuse me for playing traffic cop a bit more often today as we navigate our way through this. But we've got a lot to discuss. We've got a lot that I'm just frankly curious about, which, as Jocelyn knows from being on the show previously, is really the main driver of this show, is my own curiosities. So I'm super eager to find out more about this combination and kind of the why, and as I love to say, kind of the entrepreneurial thinking that went into all of it. So first question is just kind of a fun kind of question for anybody that wants to take it. Maybe Stefanie, you can take it first and we'll work our way around. But who remembers kind of the first moment each of your paths crossed? And what was your first impression of each other?
Yeah. So with Jocelyn, she and I had like seen her stuff. I think it was following Todo Verde on Instagram, but her and I actually got into this Naturally Network minority owned accelerator program. So that's where we really like got to know each other. You know, we were going to these classes every week, and following that program, we just kind of kept in touch. And there was like a
Okay.
couple shows where we were exhibiting right next to each other, really close to each other, and that was cool. So we were able to kind of, you know, share tidbits of what we were doing in the business and who was doing what and using whatever resources. And then with Regina, I met her in Chicago where I was living at the time back in probably 2015, 2016. And I remember her reaching out after I think we met at like a networking event. And then she actually came by my condo, and I remember we were having like a garage sale at the time, and I'm like just
You
sitting
were
in the
moving,
front.
right?
Yeah, I was
You were
getting
about
ready
to
to
move,
move.
Steph.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like sitting in the front, and she comes up with her crunchitos. At that time, they were Nemi snacks. And it was like, do you want to try these? Like, these are the samples I got, and da da da. And so it was super cool. And then after that, like, obviously followed her story and, yeah, and just got to see both of these entrepreneurs grow.
I love that. Regina, I'm curious, like when you first met whomever of the stories, we just heard a bit of the stories, right? Like, was there that sense of like, wow, okay, like she's like me, right? Like I think I want to like attach myself to this person in some way, right? Because I think she might be going through the same stuff that I am.
Yeah, so with Steph, I remember when we first met at that breakfast, and it was a breakfast for entrepreneurs in CPG, food and beverage in Chicago. And I remember when I first started talking to her, I thought, she knows so much about the industry. And she had been doing a lot of retail work with Whole Foods, and she had been in the industry for several years now. And I think, Steph, you were now you were consulting. You had your consultancy agency,
Yeah.
and I told her, I'm thinking about starting a food business. I'm very new in this space. I have no background in CPG. You know, we started talking about what I wanted to do. And it struck me that she knew a lot but in a very empathetic way. You know, she listened to the people that approached her and talked about our ideas. And then when I met her, and I really wanted to get her feedback on the product, because I wanted to get feedback from a lot of different people at the time before starting. But then I wanted to learn from her as well. And then with Joss, it was very similar, but in a different space, because I started following her on Instagram. And I was like, oh my God, she's a chef, and she's doing, you know, she's Mexican too. And I know she knows Mexican food. Like, she knows flavor. She knows Mexican food well. I was seeing what she was making already. I loved what she was doing with the community as well in LA and California. And I just DM'd her, and I was like, hey, you know, I'm Regina. I'm from Mexico City. I'm thinking about this Mexican snack, and I would love to send you some samples and get your feedback, because I really think that you have an amazing Mexican cuisine palette, and I would love to get your feedback. And this is what I'm
I
trying to
love
hit
that.
for the product. And that's how we first connected.
That's awesome. And for listeners, viewers of the show, they know that Jocelyn and I met because of a great friend. We'll shout her out here as always, Kiana Patterson, who literally I was at the Expo West food industry show with some friends who were building a food CPG focused venture capital firm out of Guadalajara at that time. Now they're in Texas and Guadalajara, but I was there visiting them in Anaheim, here not too far south of us in LA. And Kiana was like, hey, I've got some young food founders that you should meet, and I'm going to send them to look for you. Like, I just sent them a picture of you. Like, go, like, so if you see this person, this is, and Jocelyn, it sounds like it's a good thing you're as active on Instagram as you are, because other than me and you and Kiana Patterson finding each other, like, these women are finding you because of the IG.
Yeah. Yeah. We all definitely connected in that way. And it's been cool to meet in person over the years, and also to just connect with each other, like not just ourselves, but our families, right? So like being next to Stefanie's booth at those expos, like I really got to connect with her family who's usually doing trade shows with her. Her dad is like the MVP of sales for TUYYO 1.0. And then I've stayed with Regina and like met her husband and like now know her brother. And so like that's been another cool layer of just like tapping into this relationship is like the family that kind of comes with the person, which has been great.
That's awesome. That's really cool. What an amazing way to lay a foundation for the rest of the story we're going to talk about. And let's tackle the big announcement stuff right off the top here. So we've obviously got a lot of other angles that I want to unpack this from that I'm curious about. But right off the top, I'd love if each of you can add to this. Maybe we'll start with Jocelyn. Just our audience knows you a little bit, so maybe you can give us kind of a big picture perspective on this newly combined TUYYO, and why was this the obvious choice for you?
Yeah. So the conversations first came up about a year and a half ago. Regina and I were traveling a lot. We traveled to a few trade shows. We were doing demos. And towards the end of one of those trips, we were talking about how often we should connect, whether we should create a recurring, virtual meetup just to continue to share resources and figure out how to support each other. Also figuring out if we should do like a Latina kind of contingent of like support services for each other. And in that conversation, we're like literally in the back of a car getting, driven to the airport. And I was like, what about an idea of like us just joining forces, our businesses coming together? We wouldn't have to be siloed, right? And like figure out ways to support each other. Like we would literally be in it together. And so that seed was planted. We didn't do much about it. We just kind of talked about it here and there a couple times. But then Stefanie and I had a call before Notopia last year. So last summer. And we were sharing resources and like doing all the things and just prepping ourselves for that show. And that's where the idea came from Stefanie of like, what if we join forces or we're a holding company? And that just was like oh my God, like I've been having this conversation. Would you be up to talking to Regina? And so the stars just really aligned. And also the timing was interesting because we didn't talk to Regina about it right away. I get back from Notopia that weekend. She texts me, can you talk? Yes, call me right now. Literally the first thing she says on the phone is, I'm ready. Like, let's figure out how to bring our companies together. And I was like, oh my God. I was just having this conversation with Stefanie. What about the three of us? And honestly, I think that being a trio is just so much more powerful. There's an energy that we each bring and also an expertise that we each bring to the table that is so unique that I think just really makes it a solid team, in my opinion. And it's been great figuring this out with them in just the last, 8 months, 7-8 months. We've been really going 1,000 miles per hour to get this going. And so the idea behind it was we can be a stronger company together because we have somebody, Stefanie, who's representing from a sales perspective, me from a marketing perspective, Regina from an operations perspective. So like really splitting the work and excelling in those areas and figuring out how we can streamline some of our COGS and like bringing down expenses and just bringing in all of our networks together too. So we've each individually built a really strong network of supporters, of advocates. And now this is an opportunity to really bring everybody to the table. We're going to be launching a crowdfunding campaign. And so we're giving people an opportunity to invest in this new company as well. And so what better way to create excitement than to show the industry that you don't need to be acquired by a big company, but that startup companies that have, a footprint in the industry who are establishing themselves can also come together and build something stronger.
No, I love that. Regina, I'm curious, right? Like, has it played out as you all hoped it would? Kind of those initial feelings around, oh my God, like she's an expert in this and she's an expert in that, and that complements what I do. Has that kind of persisted so far?
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Chisos Capital. Everyone knows that raising capital is hard. And frankly, finding the next pool of entrepreneurs to get access to as limited investors is sometimes impossible too. Do you have a big idea, a dream you're building, but you're struggling to find early funding?
Well, Chisos is changing the game for founders, creators, athletes, and investors. Whether you're launching a startup, growing your creative brand, or training for the big leagues, Chisos backs you. Chisos uniquely invests up to $100,000 in people, not just products, whether they be entrepreneurs, creators, or even athletes. With their unique CISA model, convertible income share agreements, founders get flexible funding without giving up equity or ownership, and investors get attractive returns and great upside with less risk. Chisos works for both investors and the people bringing our world to life. If you're seeking access to a truly diverse pool of deals, or you're someone who feels overlooked by the VC game, Chisos is ready to back you. So apply now at chisos.io.
Yes, and I think it's even beyond my expectations, because when we first started talking about it earlier September, we got together in person. We did an in-person retreat. And since the beginning, the three of us are very comfortable being vulnerable and sharing what we're good at, what we're not, sharing what makes us uncomfortable. And since the beginning, the three of us we've been in here for this industry for about 5 to 6 years with our companies. And it was easy for us to connect in that way and really have an honest conversation about what are going to be our roles and responsibilities. And then everything started working from then. We brought in the retailers. We made them part of this conversation. We asked for a lot of help from advisors and mentors that gave us really good feedback. We were able to find very fast an expert in operations that helped us with supply chain and logistics, because as Joss said, one of the goals for this is cost optimization and share resources. So what was the best way to do that? And we needed help also to get that figured out. We brought in an attorney, we brought in a fractional CFO, a designer that helped us with the branding, a new logo and packaging. And since September, everything has flowed really well and very fast too. I think even the three of us, we've talked about this is really happening and everything that needs to happen. And of course, there are some timeline limitations like Expo West or some launches that we're planning, but it's easy. Everything that we've done, from connecting each other to figuring out our roles and responsibilities to the day-to-day, to us also understanding, the three of us, some particularities of each other's businesses as well, because, and we connect, we talk daily pretty much, and we connect daily, but I feel so honored, and it really has been such a gift to be able to partner with Steph and Joss. And we had a very similar mission, and we were already doing products that had a similar consumer that came from a similar background. And now us being able to do it together, and I can see now how it's just stronger, and it's been way faster than how the three of us operated independently. So it's truly been a gift.
1 + 1 + 1 = 6 in this case, right? That's great. That's the way that's the way it's supposed to go, ideally. That's actually, thank you for that, Regina. That's a perfect segue too. Stefanie, maybe you can talk to kind of the today and then where we're going, right? So maybe give us kind of a sense of, bring us up to speed on where this thing is at now, and then what's coming up next, and then maybe even, if you've got the interest, like share with us kind of the vision without breaking any secrets out, right? Like share with us kind of the vision for what does this look like over the near and medium term horizon?
Yeah, so we have already done our kind of industry announcement. We put it out on LinkedIn. We've, shared it, as Regina said, with our distributor partners and retail partners. We will be using Expo West as more of that reveal platform. We'll have a tasting table through a community called Included CPG. So it was a wonderful free spot that we were able to apply for and receive from them. So we're super thankful for them. And that's where we're going to reveal the new branding. We're going to have the products for sampling and have mock-ups of the packaging. So that's kind of where we are right now. As Regina said, it's been fast. It's been super fast. And we want to do things right, but we want to keep that momentum going. So we've been, trying to make sure that we don't go too far overboard in terms of trying to like rush out product, for sale or anything like that. We really want everything to come together cohesively. So after Expo West is really where we're going to be working on that consumer facing reveal. So we've done some Instagram posts. Joss is really, really great about just being out there and putting this news out into the world to start to prepare all of our customers of the change, because it's going to be a huge education, for them to go from buying Todo Verde, buying Nemi, buying Tuyo, aguas frescas in canisters, to now buying a completely new looking TUYYO Foods product and all the products pulled together.
Yeah.
So it's like phases, we have to like be patient, but also have to keep things moving. I think that's been the biggest, not so much a challenge, but that's just really been the biggest, like most important thing, is to keep things moving in a progressive way that doesn't stifle, but that doesn't impede us, down the future, and we don't get like head over heels.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious, right? We each have, as you just mentioned, thank you for that. Like, kind of, we have our own independent products that have been our selling in different retail market distribution, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm curious, like, just from a curious standpoint, I guess a consumer point of view, if we want to formalize that question, right? Like, how do these products or product lines kind of complement each other now? And then, is there going to be collaboration between you three on like completely new products? And anybody can take this, whoever wants to.
I mean, I'll take this. So I met with a supporter, longtime advisor who is also an investor when we were in the early stages of having this conversation. And he was just like, I don't get it. Like, you have savory seasonings, you have these sweet agua frescas, and you have like, it feels disjointed. And I was like, when you sit at a Mexican table, what do you eat? You're eating tacos, you have chips in the middle of the table, you're drinking agua fresca. We're literally placing you at the table with a full meal of products. And he was like, oh, I get it. I get it now. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do. And with this merger, we're also going to be launching a new category or a new SKU of moles, or two new SKUs of moles. And so we're really excited about that, because then now we're entering sort of the sauce space and also trying to grow authentically in, the Latin American category of mole, which is like very up and coming. It's a new category, and we're really trying to help shape what that category looks like on shelf.
I love this. I'm going to pull on this thread now because it's fantastic marketing, in my humble opinion. I love this idea of like, we're bringing you to the table.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
so then the mole becomes like just another thing we would find on the table. And then so if that becomes, I'm imposing myself into your story now, right? Like, if that becomes the driving narrative internally in how you experiment with products or determine products, and then also could become the external narrative to the consumer base or to your retail partners, like, wow, that's pretty, I mean, that it struck me just listening to you say it. I was like, oh, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. And also with the name, right? Like, we played around with many different variations of a name. We wanted something that was 2 syllables that people easily understood, but that also stood for something. And, we kept coming back to Stefanie's brand name, TUYYO, which means like, what's mine is yours, or it means you and me if you say tú y yo. And this idea kept kind of coming back of like, we want to have this brand that feels like we're sharing something. We're sharing moments at the table. We're sharing with each other. We're creating products that create that type of opportunity. Yeah. So what's mine is yours is really our tagline, or in Spanish, lo mío es tuyo. And so it's really playing off of that. Like, we're bringing you to the table. We want to share what we have with you in a very authentic way, in a way that feels very true to the ways that we grew up. And then be able to kind of spread that sort of generosity, that idea of sharing across all family tables.
Beautiful. And also just frankly, very practical, right? I mean, just from a business standpoint, it's just very practical. And then it's also very beautiful narrative story. It's funny, as I'm listening to you say, like, that example of the investor who was like skeptical at first blush, right? Like I only know the CPG industry from having the good fortune to talk to incredible founders and creators like you guys on this show over the last 6 years. But like, it seems to me that the natural conclusion would be, well, yeah, because most CPG companies just build their single siloed products and then they get acquired by this big, massive conglomerate brand company. And then that company is the one that delivers you the whole table worth of products, right? And so the investor's mind is like, well, wait, like, aren't you guys skipping some steps? Aren't you individually supposed to get it? And what you ladies are saying, as I'm hearing it, essentially is, no, like, why wait to that? Like, why can't we do that? Why can't we create the conglomerate in the best sense of that, otherwise normally terrible corporate word, right? Like, why can't we create that and not talk about it in a conglomerated business sense, but talk about it in this narrative sense of like, but wait, just like take a snapshot of any family Mexican table at a holiday and like, look at, there's another product category we could get into. There's another one we could make, right? That's beautiful and also very practical business-wise. All right, so I'm curious, you all have kind of mentioned in different ways. I want to ask you about like the retail relationships, your distribution partnerships, all those types of things, right? Obviously, don't have to break any news or share any secrets that you're not supposed to talk about, because I realize those are really contracted relationships. But if you can help us understand this, like, I know selfishly, just because of Jocelyn, right? Like, she's running around Sprouts with her Toda Verde products, and I'm forwarding her Instagram posts from about Sprouts to all my friends that live really far away that have a Sprouts near them. And I think I'm responsible for at least a couple of sales in the last year. But like, so I'm curious, like, how did those, when you went back, either individually or collectively, when you went back and started having those discussions with, each of these, like Jocelyn's like, well, I have these partners, and Stefanie, you probably have other retail partners by nature in part of just where you live, like in the Midwest. And you've got Jewel Osco and Dominic's, if Dominic's is still around from when I was a kid growing up in Chicago, right? And you've got all these other markets. And Regina, you have different relationships in different cities for your products. Like, what was the reaction of those partners? And then whoever wants to take this first, like, how do you say to how do you do those partners basically then say like, oh, okay, we'll carry your stuff, or nope, like, we don't care. You can have 12 products under the same brand. Like, we only cared about that product. Like, how does it work, practically speaking? Maybe Stefanie, take this first.
Yeah, it's tricky. So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, very much like the operation side, is how do we now fill in to the markets that each of us are in separately. And, Regina, she's actually in a lot of food service kind of accounts and like quick serve. So that's also a really unique avenue and channel that like Jocelyn and I are not in. So it's also going to be like, how are we going to also look at these new like outlets for the product? I'd say, we do have like 2 real focus retailers that, we're really set on, we need these guys to be successful and we really want to make it pop for them. But aside from that, this year is really going to be about getting that transition. So getting all of the old branded products into the new brand and packaging into where we're currently at. And then look at what that overlay is, because sometimes depending on the market, we could be like all in the Hispanic set, but other markets, like a Whole Foods, we wouldn't be there. We would be in, a functional snacks, a seasoning, and a hydration set. So there's various challenges within that too. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely working on it in terms of what that strategy is. And I think we have a good foothold on it. And thankfully, a lot of our partners, retailers, distributors, we brought them in from the beginning. So they are on board to help us.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really beautiful.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Shore Capital. In today's venture capital world, it's not just about cash. It's about relationships. Capital is harder to find. Limited investors have fewer managers that they can trust. And the industry is just filled with far too much hype. Shore Capital is an early-stage venture fund investing in the world's most ruthlessly iterative founders, helping its limited partners to find founders who are solving the world's most dynamic problems. teams that excel in mastering the idea maze, teams moving with a rapid, iterative velocity and demonstrating radical resourcefulness. Shore Capital doesn't just write checks, though. They become fractional co-founders when needed, offering strategic support, high-leverage relationship development, and a deep commitment to the long-term success of their portfolio companies. If you are a ruthlessly iterative founder with a bold vision or a limited investor seeking sustained access to the brightest, big thinkers of our time, Shore Capital wants to meet you. So visit shorecapital.notion.site to learn more.
And
Regina,
Rob, can I add something to that?
I was just, see, that's how good you are. I was just going to throw it to you. Yes.
Thank you. One thing, just following up on what Stefanie shared, is since the beginning, we reached out to them because we also needed and wanted to understand, what would this mean for you? If we were to do this, what would it look like for you? Because we brought them in the conversation since we're thinking about doing this. Okay, we're doing this. This is the design process, how it's going. Our UPC codes will change. So the whole process of the technicalities of it,
Right.
what would this look like for you? What would you need from us? What's the timing for that? What would the timeline be for anything that we had to do and get ready for it? Because we were also coming from a space where we didn't know exactly how would that work for them. And we needed their feedback and we wanted them to be involved.
I love that. And I this is me saying this, not imposing this upon any of the three of you, literally almost the naivete of like, hey, I don't know how this is going to work for you. So rather than just speculate in our bubble and on Zoom, like we're going to ask you. And the worst that could have come out of that could have been them saying like, whoa, don't do that. Right. And then that would have been more data input that you all would have had in your decisions.
Right.
But instead, it sounds like Regina, like they reacted positively to this. I'm curious, was there anybody in those buyer, decision maker people roles at these retailers that were like, no one's ever asked us for our input at this early in a process? Like, thank you. Like, was there an appreciation of the process that they had just been invited into?
I think there was, but it was expressed more in an excitement kind of way.
It's awesome.
I think the retailers that we've connected so far, all of them, and Stefan just, let me know if it's been different, but I think really all of them have been very excited about this change and this process. They had really good feedback on our branding too. So when we shared it with them, we had 3 different options at the beginning. And again, we really wanted to know, we can walk the shelf all the time and we can do our research, but also you are there every single day and you have access to a lot of information and data and research that we may not in the same way. So what are your thoughts on this? Because this is a collaborative approach of what we're doing. And we actually need that cooperation from different community members, including the retailers and our distribution partners. So also having the conversation, as Steph said, with the distributors of us, again, what do you need from us? How can we do this? How can we make this work? And what is the best way to make it work with you?
So exciting. Anybody, anything to add to that? No,
Not really.
We're good. She nailed it. She nailed it. I love it. Thank you for carrying that part of it, Regina. Okay, so let's do this. In a second here, we're going to just do a little bio. I'm not going to assume that everybody listening or watching this that will listen and watch this from your communities knows everybody's story. And I'm not going to assume that my entire audience who knows Jocelyn's story is going to remember it. So we're going to give you a chance to do that. But I'm curious, Joss, talk to me for a second. I'm feeling this next question is what's going to happen. Like, I feel like if this works out as you guys envision, not just for your own individual brands and purposes, but like kind of on a bigger plane, I'm feeling like you could be seeding some changes in how the food industry works and in how young CPG companies see the paths that they can take. Like you guys almost, it feels like, and maybe it's just me not knowing, feels like you're kind of charting like a new pathway that hasn't really been done maybe before or often. And like, do you agree with that assessment? And then do you see this having some positive ripple effects on the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I started to verbally share with some folks. Like I was in, I think October, in Chicago or in Illinois for the Fresh Time Market pitch competition with Startup CPG. And so I started to share with a few people that we were working on this process, one of them being Daniel from Startup CPG. And he was like, this is the future of the industry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was like, it's going to be brands that already have some sort of a footing in the industry who are trying to get to that next step, and they're maybe hitting a wall, and it's going to be coming together that's going to do it.
All right.
And so,
Shout
he was
out
like, we want
Daniel.
to, yeah. So he was like, I want to have you on the podcast. Like, I want you to talk about your why and people to understand it. But then what was also interesting is that I had a couple of other founders reach out to me, and they were like, I was talking to somebody about merging and it didn't work out for XYZ reasons. Like, it just got too complicated, and we didn't have, I mean, we were really fortunate that we got, pro bono attorney and a lot of, support to help us with the process. But they kind of got to that place where they're like, oh, are we willing to invest like thousands of dollars to make this happen and to go through all those hurdles? And so that became kind of a wall that they hit. So it is a little bit of that, right? Like, people have been thinking about something like this as an opportunity to continue to grow in an industry that's becoming a lot tougher, and harder to break through. And so how do you break through the noise with something that feels more powerful, that feels like it has its legs underneath it? And we're hearing a lot of that from, peers in the industry that like this really could be the future of it.
Incredible. And obviously, I mean, retail and what you guys are doing in the food industry is particularly tough, right? I mean, it's a particularly difficult marketplace for products and services, but just entrepreneurship in general is hard, right? As we all know, right? And so this idea that you're always kind of, and I'm not saying this about you all, but like, we're always kind of fighting against the prospective failure that could happen at some point in the future, right? And so this idea that you all see are forging a new path that essentially forestalls that and buys you all each individually and then collectively more time, more talent, more energy, more resources, more focus to be able to potentially forestall that forever, right? And succeed. That's incredibly exciting, right? And Lord knows, Joss, we've talked about this before. People who listen to the show hear me talk about it with entrepreneurs all the time, right? I mean, this idea that, well, there's this way and there's this way, and then you sell it and, that's it. That's the only path to success, quote unquote, is of course nonsense, right? And it's just nonsense that doesn't get dispelled very often or often enough, in my humble opinion, by the entrepreneurship industry. And so this is an exciting and selfishly, me just being a big ally of women, I love to see that it was like 3 super smart Latinas that have thought about a better way to do the future. See, this is entrepreneurial thinking at its core. This is why I love this. All right, so let's do this. Regina, I'm going to ask you to help us start this. I just want to talk a little bit about who you each are, right? So I see in Regina's case, I see you went to law school at Northwestern. So shout out the Northwest side of Chicago, which is where I was born and raised, and where my daughter's fiance and father of my grandson is from Evanston. And also shout out Northwestern, because I've got like a ridiculous amount of Northwestern friends. Although weirdly, all of my Northwestern friends seem to be like women between the ages of like 45 and 30. And like 75% of them are women of color. So I don't know what's going on in Northwestern since I moved out of Chicago.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's a great thing. So like you studied at Universidad Iberoamericana in Mexico City, which is another city that's very close to my heart, having spent a ton of time there over the past decade. So how does that profile, Regina, wind up in the food business?
I don't know, Rob. I'm still trying to figure that out, because when I started, I'm actually right now in Mexico City visiting family and doing some TUYYO related work here, but I grew up here and I moved to Chicago for law school. And I love Mexican food and I love eating, and the experience of sharing a meal, it's more than the food that you're eating. And I come from that background. And I don't have a background of family that have been in CPG or in the food space. And I never imagined that I would be doing this. But when I went to the grocery store in Chicago and I saw that most of the Hispanic-inspired brands that were on shelf made me feel unrepresented of the culture that I was seeing, because a lot of them were rooted in cultural stereotypes.
Sure.
And it was actually that feeling that first kickstarted me trying to figure out, okay, if I were to do this, how would I do it? Because I would want to create something where I could elevate our culture through better for you food options. And the first thing that I did was enroll at the Hatchery, which is a local Chicago food and beverage incubator, and took the How to Start a Food Business 101. And then that was the first step. And there's always that first step. Or like, I think when there's so much uncertainty with new things, with trying new things, and there's so much fear. And I think at the end of the day, kind of what we are doing, we had, we didn't know exactly where to start when the merge happened, and we needed to reach out for help. And we still do. And that was kind of the first step of, I love what I do. I love, going to law school and doing immigration law for some time and human rights law, but that kept showing up over and over again, that feeling. And I started doing both for some time. I kept my full-time job up until
Smart.
2.5
See,
years
you're
ago.
the smart lawyer in the group. That was hedging your bets. Very smart.
Well, if I were making money in the industry, Rob, that would have played differently at the beginning, probably. But I just started out, bootstrapped and trying to figure out, as we all do. But I love being in the industry. It's changing all the time. There's so much to learn. I think naturally you have to be a curious person if you're in the industry, and that's what we're trying to figure out right now.
I love that. Jocelyn, everybody knows you, and then Stefanie, you can bring up the rear on this one with your background story. But everybody knows you here on our show and knows the story of Todo Verde. But just as a refresher for folks that are meeting you for the first time today, right? I talk about you, local activist, chef, cookbook author, recipe contributor to the New York Times, like all these things. But what led you to launching Todo Verde and throwing yourself into this industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was really the COVID pivot that did it.
Yeah.
Prior to COVID, I was catering. I was kind of on the path to open a restaurant. I had done a crowdfunding campaign to help me kind of get to that place. And what I was doing at that time around COVID was catering large events like official Super Bowl tailgate when it was in LA, and doing things making food for a whole concert venue with the LA Philharmonic. And then, with COVID, things just really slowed down, and it forced me to kind of take a look at the next opportunities that I would have, and if it did mean opening a restaurant. And every friend in the industry who has a restaurant was like, do not open a restaurant. Like, please, I beg you, if you could do something else, if I could do something else, I would do that. Like, do not take this path. And so thankfully, because of my cookbook, which came out April 2020, by some weird timing or divine grace, whatever it is, was really this saving grace within my business, where it gave me an opportunity to kind of reframe how I put myself out there as a chef, how it opened up new doors and opportunities. And so I had always wanted to do a product line. And one thing I rarely mention is early in the Todo Verde years of, doing food service, I actually started bottling my agua fresca and selling it at local cafes throughout Los Angeles. And so I realized in that process, because so many people love my agua frescas, they were very unique, like strawberry rose with chia seeds, maple syrup, orange blossom drink. And then I also had a black rice horchata. And so I would always get people asking, where could I pick this up? Can I get it at my coffee shop? So I started playing around with that and figuring out the operations of making it myself. And ultimately, I was like, this is a nightmare. I have something that is not shelf stable, that has a very short expiration date, that I have to drive around, cold, keep at temperature, drive around and make deliveries. And so it just wasn't the right timing. And I knew that when I came back to this idea of having a product line, I had to really think about it differently. I knew that I didn't even want to produce it myself, that I wanted to work with a manufacturing company to produce it for me, just to take that operations element out from underneath me. And so, with the COVID pivot, I got this grant actually that was meant for me to open a restaurant. It was a big $50,000 grant. And I reached out to them and I said, I know you have to get rid of the funding by the end of the year, by the end of 2020. I'm not going to open a restaurant, but would you be up for giving me the grant to help me figure out the CPG industry?
Okay.
and it worked out. And so I was able to hire a food scientist. I was able to work with an operations person who helped me identify some partnerships and co-manufacturers in the process and getting set up with like non-GMO project. And so it's been a really like big learning curve. I came in with ego of like, oh, I've done all this stuff in the food industry and I have a cookbook and I've da 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 da. This should be easy, like just to knock on the door and be like, carry my stuff in your store. And it's like so the opposite.
Right.
You know, the CPG industry is like its own beast with its own people. And also, like, interestingly enough, I mean, people probably assume this or guess this, but like all I won't say all, but majority of the buyers for most of the groceries that we buy at grocery stores are white men.
Of course.
You know, who don't understand, you know, regional mole, true to culture taco seasoning, like even, you know, all the things that we're doing, they don't understand it. So that is also like an uphill battle of educating the buyers who are then the gatekeepers for us trying to get in the door.
Yeah. Boy, little did you know, the universe was telling you, you do want to be in the agua fresca beverage business. You just wanted someone else. You just wanted to be in the business with someone else who already figured out all the hard stuff.
Exactly. Right? Somebody who already figured out how to make a shelf stick.
Exactly. That's awesome. No, I love it. I love the serendipity of that and how it got us here.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at eSudo. You know, running any business, but especially a law firm, means balancing a lot. And technology, frankly, shouldn't be a headache. eSudo makes information technology and cybersecurity simple for law firms large or small. With over 20 years of experience, they specialize in everything from Microsoft 365 management to advanced cybersecurity solutions. They help you to stay ahead of threats, manage your data securely, and keep your tech running smoothly so that you can focus on what matters most, your clients. eSudo understands the legal industry's unique needs, offering tailored solutions to ensure that your firm is always in compliance and always protected. Are you ready to upgrade your firm's technology or get help with your questions? Visit esudo.com.
Stefanie, like as I looked at your background, first it looks like you were the climber inside the industry. Like it looks like you're the person that has been working inside the food industry, kind of growing your career. As I was looking at your background, I was fancifully thinking of some of my younger background when I was kind of in the corporate world and working inside of technology and whatnot. So it looks like you've worked across the U.S. And today you're joining us from Michigan, but you have roots tied to Chicago. I've seen like Southern California show up on your CV, right? Yeah, which I love. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. So, but like, what's the origin story of you and TUYYO before we even get to these ladies?
Yeah. So I'm originally from San Antonio. So my parents were actually high school sweethearts, and all of my family is in San Antonio, Texas. So whenever I go home, it's just like, it's wild. And my dad joined the Coast Guard when just before I was born. So that is also part of the reason why I am just all over the place and have lived in a lot of places, because we would just move around, and that kind of nomadic lifestyle kind of stuck with me a little bit. And then through that, he actually ended up working in the galleys on the boats. And so I would just be like, 7, 8 years old, going onto the galley of a ship, munching on snacks, like just kind of like being in like that kitchen environment. So food just really got like super ingrained, not just through culture, but just through like everyday living. He had like a catering company for a little bit just to like make extra money on the side. So I would like help him out and help him plate things and things like that. And so fast forward, I ended up going to Johnson Wales University because I knew I wanted a career in food. So I went there and studied restaurant and food service management and really did more of the business side after taking like some culinary courses, and then realizing like I didn't want to work 70 hours a week in a restaurant, but I definitely wanted to do something in food. So it just by happenstance, I went to a like career fair that the school was having, and I met a recruiter from Whole Foods Market. And so I ended up going into their like assistant manager and training program. And this was in the Florida region. And so that really started me on this path of like working at Whole Foods for almost 10 years, moving
Okay.
up to Chicago throughout that time. I was a local forager up there. So I was working on bringing brands into the company, and I had the 8 states of the Midwest plus Ontario, Canada, which was really pretty interesting to see Canadian regulations and just how products come to market in another country versus the US. And so I loved doing that. I did leave before the Amazon acquisition. So I will say, I feel like I might have seen the writing on the wall of like, I don't know if this is going to be my long-term thing.
Yeah.
Plus I wanted to get experience kind of on the other side of the desk, And so I ended up working at the Honest Company and then got recruited to another kind of celebrity brand company called This Bar Saves Lives that was founded by Kristen Bell and a few other actors, which that brand was super cool because that was a for-profit company that partnered with nonprofit entities. So every bar sold equal a packet of food to a child suffering from malnutrition.
Oh,
So we
wow.
worked with nonprofits in order to get I don't know if you've heard of Plumpy Nut. Plumpy Nut is like it's a food packet that you give basically to a child that's like starving to death. And
Okay.
it
No,
gives
that
them
yes, I have heard of that. I heard of it years ago. I don't know.
yeah,
On a
yeah.
documentary or something. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we were working with one of the makers and producers of that product, and we would then ship over containers of the plumping nut
Wow.
to different places in the world that would need it, to Haiti, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, to just different, places where they were experiencing famine and starvation. And so that was like super cool
Yeah.
because I felt like, wow, there can be a benefit, right, to having your own, to having a for-profit business. Um, Beyond that, I was living in Chicago during this time. I ended up getting married, leaving that company because I was flying from like LA to Chicago, like, every like 6 weeks. And then my husband's job moved us to Atlanta.
Okay.
So ended up stopping that and then just starting independent consulting, which is where I had met Regina.
Right.
And then I moved to Atlanta, went to school at Emory to get my executive MBA right when 2020 started. And so it was
Oh, the
like, great.
pandemic shows up in the storyline again.
I know. I know. I mean, talk about like real world examples of like what happens when a crisis strikes the
Right.
business world, right? Um, and so I was like, I'm taking this MBA. What do I do with my life? Like everybody else, like figuring out their COVID pivot. And I just was remembering, like, I had spent some time with family during this time. And I was like, what if I did something like a CPG product myself, and what would it be? And I was just remembering, okay, well, like, what did I grow up with?
Mm,
Because nostalgia is always something that I think is key, and it really is helpful for a customer to really like get that connection to a product. So I thought
sure.
about, well, what did I grow up with? I grew up with Kool-Aid, right? I grew up with Tang. I grew up with Lunchables. I grew up with Fruit by the Foot, all of these crazy things. And then on the Mexican side of the cuisine, I grew up with mole and, menudo and agua fresca. And I just remember my grandma making her agua fresca all the time. I was like, well, what if there could be like a Kool-Aid, but made with real fruits, kind of like an agua fresca, but like in that format powdered. I was like, there has to be some kind of way to like marry these two like concepts. And so that's what I did. I ended up spending a couple years R&Ding and like figuring out how do I make this work and make like a clean version, a better version of what we all kind of grew up with and knew. And so I incorporated TUYYO Foods in 2020. I remember doing like an elevator talk with BevNet, and this was super early on. I think I only had like the product out for like 2 months or something. And I at the time was like, I really I'm envisioning this Tuyo to be a portfolio brand of products and bringing natural Hispanic products to market in a big way. That didn't happen for me. But then I met Jocelyn and Regina, and here we are doing TUYYO 2.0, bringing a portfolio of better for you
I
brands to
love it.
market.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't want to keep you. You guys are busy. Women in demand. You got a lot going on. So I want to kind of keep this moving along. I've got like two more questions. One of which is just kind of a bullet point action takeaway that we always do at the end of the show. So we'll get to that in a second. But the one thing I want to pull apart, maybe for the just to put a bow on the personal side of this, right? Is and maybe Jocelyn, you could talk about this briefly, and then Regina, if you want to hit on this as well, that'd be great. You so beautifully lean into your stories of community and heritage, but I'm curious, like the businessman in me now asks, right? What's that line between honoring the culture and then commodifying it for financial gain and building of the corporation? Regina, maybe you could take a crack at this first.
Yes, and you actually said something that was interesting about our cultures, because even though the three of us are Latinas, we each live and experience our Latinidad in a different way. And we even identify differently, even from the same country, you have all these subcultures. So for us, one of the first things that we talked on, and is one of our values actually, is authenticity. What feels authentic to what we're doing and how we're doing it. And it goes beyond the product being something that may be consumed in a Latin American country. It's also about how we're approaching the industry and what we're doing with the industry and then with the community. And finding that balance between an authentic product or even our heritage to something that the consumer knows and or might be comfortable eating or might be more familiar with. That is something that we regularly discuss. And that's also how some of our flavors can come to life. At least, even when I was thinking about Nemi at the beginning, there were some flavors that you find them everywhere in Mexico, but not yet in the US. And there is a space between, at the end of the day, we as consumers also buy things that we feel comfortable and familiar with. And how can we make that purchase easy for them to do, but still feeling authentic and still feeling like we are respecting our heritage and still representing and hopefully making the community proud of what they are buying into, they're believing in, and they're consuming.
So here's our closing segment question. As always, we like to change up the vibe a little bit. Actionable takeaways. What are, as the negotiators, as the three CEOs, the co-founders who've come together to create one company together, for the entrepreneurs that are listening, what are kind of three key non-negotiables that anybody sitting in any of your seats should make sure that they clarify before signing themselves up to such a partnership? What are like the two or three things that absolutely jumped out at you? You're like, okay, you got to take care of this, this, and this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would say first and foremost, you have to be values aligned, right? Like, what are your non-negotiables in business and in life, right? Like, how do we show up for each other in that sense, knowing that, this person has a hard boundary around this, or so just like really understanding like what makes this person's like wheels turn, what gets them excited, and like what values are most important to them, and do my values align with that? And so like, for us in like business, for example, we were like, we really want to always use real ingredients, always, use products that or create products that are natural, better for you, et cetera, et cetera. But then on the personal level, it's like, okay, we're trying to create a wellness brand. How do we also show up for each other and like create space for each other, and make sure that we're not, like burning the candle at both ends, as they say, right? So I would say like that would be one of them, is like making sure you're aligned in values.
I love that. Stefanie, anything to add to that?
I mean, I think like business wise too, you need to think about what you're really passionate about, like what part of that business you like doing. And then when you're considering working with somebody else or partnering with somebody else, what is it that they really like doing? And both what you do really not want to do, because that is
There
really
you go.
going to make or break that coordination of everything.
No, I love that. Okay, we've got to get you going. You've got other big, important things to go talk to bigger, important people about. So I'm just going to cut to the chase here and say, so grateful for the time. Thank you for putting up with me having to play traffic cop amongst us all, and for being so gracious and so thoughtful. I've been excited about Jocelyn's business and her products. Then I was excited to find out about the two of you and what you're doing and what you're building. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have had the chance to kind of early days learn and share this with our audience. I'm a huge supporter. I will be a supporter. I can't wait to see TUYYO Foods in every store everywhere. Quick shout out. You're from San Antonio, Stefanie. We've got a great alumnus of the show, former guest, who's an executive now at HEB markets back in Texas. And so we've got to make sure and she's a Latina from Mexico originally. So
let's do it. Let's connect.
We've got to build those relationships for you through the show. That's part of the benefit. But it was absolutely a pleasure. I'm so grateful. Regina, is there any, what's the website address? What should we look for on social media in the coming weeks so people can find and follow this story?
Yes, we're going to start building up our communication on social media all the way to the launch and sharing our new branding. Our website is tuyyofoods.com. And we're going to also launch a crowdfunding campaign because we want the community to be part of what we're doing. And we're going to be launching soon. So yes, we can share that with you, Rob. And thank you for this space.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Rob.
No, it was my pleasure. Absolute pleasure. It was such a blast.
You, Rob.
Greg,
this is great.
My pleasure. Good luck, Godspeed, and we'll be helping along the journey.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. You know, we can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms. As well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.